زين اشوفكم شوي راكدين بس يلا we will start. الموك solutions like I said is in the solutions كلهم I uploaded it in the chat, you can use. Let's start with the first mock question. What I will do is first بروح عن طريق ال PDF, بعدين I will open the mock test نفسه and I will copy paste all the codes to test them out with you simultaneously عشان نشوف إنه صدق الشغل صح ولا لا. So first things first, question 1. زين let me close these. زين الحين question 1. Consider the circuit shown which includes the following. زين يعطيكم sinusoidal wave with variables, electrical يعني it's an electrical system. You just need to understand what these equations mean. زين you don't need to understand exactly شو ohms law وكل هذا ما تروحون تدققون وايد فيه, بس you get the general idea of it. Yes, everything is being recorded. Define the variables and نروح ل part A. Define the variables V, C, L, R, F, W أو أوميجا. لو تلاحظون هني زين كاتبين لكم what the variable should be and you should copy paste exactly what is mentioned. يعني إذا مكتوب W small case تكتبونه ك W small case في ال Matlab. Alright? So let's start. Define the variables V, C, L, R, F and omega which will be defined with W. V is equal to 15 over here. V is equal to 15V. And then C is equal to 1.5 microfarads. انتو تعرفون انتو engineers, you know what micro means. Micro means times 10 to the power of minus 6. And then لازم طبعا تحطون التحويلات كلها. Alright. اي مكان تشوفون مايكرو او ملي او كيلو لازم تحطون تحويلات. ف C is 1.5 times 10 to the power of minus 6. And then L is equal to 300 millihenry اللي هو 300 times 10 to the power minus 3. R is just equal to 5 ohms. R is equal to 5. F is equal to 16 kilohertz. I made a mistake. It's 15 times 10 to the power of 3 لأنه مكتوب kilohertz. See, even I made that mistake. Just make sure you are putting in الكيلو والملي والمايكرو على حسب. و W أو omega is equal to 2 pi F which is 2 times pi times F. زين make sure you are putting times. Do not put it this way. الماتلاب ما يفهم شو معناته 2 pif. زين فلازم تكتبون 2 times pi times F in this way. Alright? That is part A. That's it. 3 marks حصلتوا just for knowing how to define the variables. Now part B. Define the complex values. Complex نعرف إنه we will use يعني there are a lot of different ways to define complex numbers. For complex, we can use either complex or write it directly. I prefer using the complex method because it makes it easier. Of impedances ZL, كاتبين لكم capital ZL بتستخدمون كvariable. إنزين ZC capital ZC و ZT capital أو total impedance اللي هو ZT total اللي هو بيكون capital ZT. Alright? The idea here is you have to know how to define a given complex number. مايكرو هذيله لازم تعرفونهم. يعني انتم مهندسين بصراحه اقول لكم حتى لو ما تعرفونهم تعلموهم لان بتستخدمونهم طول حياتكم. You need to understand micro, milli, kilo. These are very important to know. All right. Please make sure your mics are muted. انزين. So moving on. الحين ZL we know ZL في السؤال معطلنا LJ omega. شو يعني LJ omega؟ معناته L times J which is a complex. J لو تتذكرون J or I means it's a complex number. W. If you notice here ZL it's only imaginary. There is no real part to it. فيوم تكتبونه ZL equal I'm writing it in this way complex. You will write the real part and the imaginary part. The real part is 0 لأنه ما عندنا هني any real part في equation. إنزين imaginary part is simply just L times W. لأن this is basically L times W times J. فالcomplex part is L times W. إنزين ZC same thing بس الحين في ZC you need to know a little bit of math. 1 over J إنزين 1 over J شو معناته؟ 1 over CW you know. إنزين 1 over J is let me just go to paint to explain this concept very quickly. if you remember in complex numbers j زين j is equal to square root of minus 1. Alright? So if j is equal to square root of minus 1, what is 1 over j? 1 over j or I, whatever, زين, is 1 over square root minus 1. زين, I believe they call this radicalization, اللي هو بما معناه if you multiply up and down by square root of minus 1. Square root of minus 1. زين, بيطلع لنا it's equal to square root of minus 1 in the top. Square root minus 1 times square root minus 1 شي يعني minus 1. صح ولا لا؟ When you're multiplying two square roots together, it's just going to remove the square root. فيطلع لكم minus 1. اللي هو بما معناه minus square root minus 1. This is an important concept to know. إنه 1 over j is equal to minus square root minus 1. ومن البداية what is square root of minus 1? It's equal to j. فنقدر نقول it is equal to minus j. تمام؟ ف 1 over j is equal to minus j. زين؟ So this is a very important thing you need to know. هذا ما بيكون معطينكم إياه في الامتحان. This is just complex numbers. You need to understand this. إنه 1 over j is equal to minus j. تمام؟ Going back to the question itself, I will solve the entire question, then I will go through your questions one by one عشان just عن التايم يعني. زين. ما أعرف إيش صاير قاعد يخرف شوي. 1 second. نروح back to the question here. زين. we have here 1 over cj omega. real part ما عندنا. We only have an imaginary part. فالreal part is 0. ال 1 over cw stays the same. 1 over c times w. بس لأن it's 1 over j, you have to put a minus in here. Okay? This has to be negative. لأن like I just explained. Alright? Because 1 over j is equal to negative j. So that's basically the trick here. حق ZC. When we go to Z total is equal to ZL plus ZC plus R. And نسيت ال R. We have to add plus R. Very simple. زين? Makes sense so far. It's straightforward. This is just a mathematical equation. And then you are just going to put ZL plus ZC plus R. And now we finished part B. We defined the ZL, we defined the ZC, we defined the ZT. Calculate the current I. We have an equation here. V is equal to I ZT. If you divide both sides by ZT, بيستوي I is equal to V over ZT. Basic algebra. For I is simply equal to V over ZT. زين? And we finish C. 2 marks just for this. We go to part D. Find the magnitude and the corresponding angle. لو تلاحظون هني كاتب لكم I لازم يكون capital I. وهني مكتب لكم magnitude لازم يكون mag. وهني theta لازم يكون تكتبون كلمة theta. Alright? الحين لو نروح لبارت دي الماجنتيود لأن هم قالوا لنا نسميه له magnitude. Alright? The magnitude is equal to the absolute of I. We use the absolute function to find the magnitude of a complex number. في هالحالة the magnitude of the complex number we have is the current, which is I. And the angle, you find it by using simply angle. And we assigned it حق theta لأن theta هو what he wants us to write it as for the phase angle. Angle of I. Straightforward. Alright? We finished part D, another 4 marks. Now, هذا ال if and else part, I will just go through it very quickly. Define a logical variable named lag. فلازم نسمي ال variable lag that will receive true if the value theta is positive, إنه greater than 0 بما معناته, and otherwise will receive false. Simply, you just write if theta, إنزين. If theta is greater than 0, very straightforward. If the angle is greater than 0, lag equal true. الفاريبل اللي عطانا lag equal true. Else lag is equal to false. That's it. إن إذا ما كان أكثر من 0 lag بيعطينا false ولازم تحطون end at the end of a logical statement. I don't think you need to know that. Alright? Now, that's the whole idea. إنزين. That's the whole concept of this. I would just want to check with you guys شو الأسئلة اللي أنا أشوف ما شاء الله وايد عندكم أسئلة. الصفر خليناه لان الكومبلكس قسمين ولازم نخليه عدل. اي احنا with the reason الحين خلينا نروح اظني part B is where everyone's confused, so I'll just repeat it one more time. الكومبلكس we put the real part and the imaginary part when defining it. A real part in this case we don't have anything real plus ZL, and then a ZL total is all of it is just an imaginary number, يعني ما في any real part في هالequation. That's why a real part is equal to 0. Imaginary is L times omega لأن ال J is the imaginary part wherever the J is. ال 0 is the real part, L times W is the imaginary part. Very simple, very straightforward. لأن عندنا هذا is L J omega اللي هو بما معناه. إنزين. If I go here ZL مثلا إنزين أو ZL is equal to J L times W أو مثلا خلينا نعطيهم number إنزين اللي هو 300 let's define our L is equal to 300 millihenry اللي هو 10 times minus 3. Alright, oops. And then this is our L. Sorry, لو تلاحظون I forgot the power. And then L is 300 times 10 to the power minus 3 لأنه ملي هنري. وال other thing is omega اللي هو بنسميه small w is equal to 2 times pi times f which is 16 times 10 to the power 3. And I'm just doing this part to explain. And then 2 times pi times 16 times 10 to the power 3. فعندنا ال L, we have our L value and we have our W value. Alright? Now, going to the equation, if we want to write ZL is equal to L times W, then times J. You can obviously write it this way بعد. This works. ما في ولا شيء غلط في هالشيء. Okay? بتشوفون إنه طلع لنا imaginary part I will excuse me will real part is 0. Real part ما عندنا real part, this is only imaginary. So you can also write it like this in يعني a different way of writing it. You could do it this way. بس أنا أباكم تفهمون الكونسبت إن يوم تستخدمون complex you can use it that way لأن it simplifies some things. إنزين تقدرون تكتبون L times W بيعطيكم بالضبط نفس الجواب. Alright? So you can write it this way or you can write it this way. Or حتى if you want to be يعني a bit more complicated تقدرون تكتبون times square root minus 1. It will give the exact same answer. All of these are the same complex number. There's just many different ways you can write them. And then, so this is the idea of the first part of part B. The second part ZC. And then, عندكم ZC is 1 over CJ omega. فالأوميجا مالنا we already عرفنا عنه. خلينا نعرف الC مالنا is equal to 1.5 times 10 to the power of minus 6. زين minus 6 ليش؟ لأنه مايكرو. Alright. So if we want to write this equation إذا نبغى نسوي بالطريقة direct is equal to 1 over C times W times J بيعطيكم نفس الجواب. ولو تلاحظون صار minus. يعني you could directly put it this way بس it's good to understand what the complex number does. فإذا سوينا complex real part is 0, imaginary part is going to be minus 1 over C times W. I'm not sure why الرقم شوي اختلف ولكن it should be the exact same thing. I think I might have made a mistake somewhere. I'm not sure where. Either way, both ways يعني both methods are correct. There is nothing wrong with this method and there is nothing wrong with this method. I am not sure why the numbers are not exact. Maybe the internal calculations are done a bit differently عشان شي في شوية variation. Okay, I see what they did here. And then this basically means the same exact thing as this بس هم مسوينها بطريقة شوي different but it means the exact same thing as this. Okay, so don't worry if you prefer using this, you can use that. There is nothing wrong with writing this equation. And you can use this as well. It's all exactly the same. There is an idea behind why it was written this way. بس شو اسمه I'm not sure why it was written this way ولكن exactly it should be the same thing. إنزين فمفهوم الحين البارت بي مفهوم ليش الكومبلكس يعني why I did this. إذا حبينا نحطه بطريقتكم اللي I feel most people prefer اللي هو we just simply write this. This is also correct. There is nothing wrong with this. That C is equal to 1 over C times J إنزين C times W times J وهني نقدر نكتب L times W times J. J or I, you can use I as well, it's the same thing. إنزين لو if you notice I'm putting one I لأن هو it's just the idea إن يوم تكتبون ال I يفضل تكتبون one next to it عشان ما يستوي خربطة إن this is just 1 times 1 يعني بما معناه of I. بس it's the same exact thing as writing I. So you can just write it the same way it was given. If that أول طريقة I said was very complicated or very confusing, I just wanted to explain the concept of 1 over j. That's why I wrote it that way. But this is the exact same thing. زين خلني بس أشوف if you guys have any more وايد لأن أشوف قاعدين تسألون على هالشيء. I repeated part B إن شاء الله شوي نفهم أكثر. ZL, LIW, CIW. Salum, like I said, you have to put the multiplication. You cannot just write it directly like this. يعني you cannot write it directly like this. إنزين. This is wrong. You have to put the multiplication between each one. إنزين. مع ال I think you don't have to necessarily بس يفضل. I would recommend always put the multiplication عشان you just تتعودون إن دائما يكون في multiplication. Alright. دائما always do the multiplication عشان ما تتخربطون. اوكي شلون عرفنا ماج ابس انزين I will get into that انزين part C بس برد اعيد part C is simply just reorganizing V equal IZT. You are just reorganizing it so that ZT is in the denominator of V. انزين that's it. All you're doing is reorganizing it so that ان تبون تطلعون I. هني part D السؤال يقول find the magnitude and find the corresponding angle. Obviously هو مو بواضح بس قصده find the magnitude of the current of الجواب اللي طلعناه والانجل مال الكرنت. ف that's why we are using I. We are trying to find the absolute of the magnitude of I, and to do that, to find the magnitude of a complex number, we use the abs function, and to find the angle we use the angle function. زين very straightforward. نشوف شو بعد عندكم أسئلة لأن I'm seeing a lot of يعني questions. فشلون عرفنا ماج absolute I مثل ما قلت لأنه we are trying to find the absolute value of the current. It's not very clear in the question بس إن of the previous part we need to find the magnitude and the angle. lag equal theta greater than 0. الجزء الأخير عادي نكتبه كذي بس لا لأن كذاك إذا كتبته lag equal theta greater than 0 والله I think you could إنزين بس المشكلة yeah I think you can do it without an if else function. يعني you could just simply write lag. Well that's a good idea. ما أعرف ليش أنا use an if else function. I'm just used to it. lag is equal to just theta greater than 0. I will explain this right now. إنزين ليش نقول lag is equal to theta greater than 0. أول شيء this part is a logical part في logical operator ف this is a logical part فالجواب ماله بيكون logical. زين يا بيكون logical 1 يا بيكون logical 0. So when theta is greater than 0 اللاج مالنا بيعطينا يعني if theta is positive بما معناه اللاج will be a 1 لأن it's true. إذا اللاج ما كتبنا إذا اللاج يعني أو الانجل كان less than 0 اللاج بيعطيكم ك logical 0 اللي هو false. So you don't even need to use an if else statement. This is how you do it without an if else statement. أصلا if else statement وايد معقد. I don't know why I used it in that case. For logical true or false you really don't need to use if else statements. بس لأن أنا متعود وايد أشياء بس أستخدم if else. That's why that was in my mind. But this is also correct. You could just simply put lag is equal to theta greater than 0. And then عمر الماجنتيود فهمت الحين. The magnitude the idea إنه إحنا نبغى نطلع الماجنتيود اللي هو بما معناه if you remember in complex numbers إنزين in polar form we have a magnitude and an angle. فالماجنتيود بيساوي الفانكشن ماله you use the absolute function to get it والangle theta you use the angle function to get it. ZC equal to 1 over 0 plus CJ omega. Sajjad, it's fine. The way you used it is completely fine. There is no need for the 0 at all. بس يعني it works. إنزين. أصلا يفضل ما تحط الزيرو بس you could put it without the 0. إنزين. إذا خلينا الجي في النص ما تفرق صح؟ يعني قصدك إذا سوينا هني كذي times W. Yes, this is the exact same thing. It's just cleaner إنه يكون ال I at the end so you know all the components of the. يعني أنا أحب أكتبها كذي عشان أعرف إن هاي كامل complex when I look at the last digit. يعني إذا كان عندكم long equation تشوفون I this is imaginary all of it. That's the only reason I put it at the end. You can write it L times I times W أو حتى تقدرون تكتبون J. It's the same thing. يعني الماج نستخدمها yes حق magnitude of a polar حق الماgnitude of a polar شو اسمه of a polar complex number in polar form عشان تطلعون الماgnitude ماله you just use the absolute function. ال I وال J you can it's ال I وال J they're exactly the same thing. ال I وال J is just a complex number فيوم يكون عندكم J يعطيكم 1I إذا تكتبون I 1I it's exactly the same thing بس لأن النوتيشن في كتب وايد يستخدمون J وايد يستخدمون I ففي الماتلاب it's just both are defined as the same thing. So ال J وال I are exactly the same thing. صوب الالكتريكال يستخدمون J أكثر صوب الماثيماتيشنز يستخدمون I أكثر صوب الميكانيكال انجينير they try to stay away لأن يكرهون المادة ف it depends on it depends يعني on who's usually using it بس J and I are exactly the same thing. There is no difference between using I و J. Alright. في بعد any other questions about this topic لأن I feel like I've answered most of them. إنزين. إذا حد للحين مو بواضح شيء عادي you can ask now. إنزين. So we just get it out of the way لأن this is one of the harder questions. Later on they become much simpler. And complex numbers I'm maybe 99% sure will come in the exam. I need you guys to make sure يعني you understand. وإحنا امتحاننا يا بالضبط كذي يعني. مو بالضبط من ناحية هذا بس من ناحية equations إن the same system بس are numbering a little bit different. Alright. So لأن هاي كان في الموك تيست أتوقع بيعطيكم another different system ولكن بيكون تقريبا نفس الشيء إنه بيكون عندكم J في denominator يعني بيكون عندكم just an imaginary number by itself and then just a real number by itself and then you will add them to each other and all of that. Thumbs up if everyone is okay so I can move on. If anyone has a question you can write them now. And now I feel like I've answered most of the questions. Okay. عادي towards the end of the mock test بعد ما نخلص if you still have questions you can ask me again and I will try to clarify. إنزين. Fun. This is my favorite question. My favorite question is this one. Mock test 2 لأن plotting يوم أشوف plotting it's honestly just fun to plot. I don't know يعني إذا أنتوا تحسون نفس الشيء. بس أنا for me plotting is just so much fun to do as a question لأن it's so easy and you can do it yourself. شكله معقد بس it's not. إنزين. بنقرأ السؤال create a 2 by 1 linear أول شيء create a 2 by 1 so you know you are going to use a subplot حتى مكتوب linear versus logarithmic subplot that plots the following. So just from the first line بدون ما تقرون أي شيء ثاني تعرفون بتستخدمون subplot 2 1 1 و 2 1 2 زين like I explained last time 2 1 إنه 2 by 1 إنه كذي 2 rows 1 column زين linear versus logarithmic subplots زين. The first plot will be the absolute value Gabs underscore dB in decibels against the frequency omega radians per second. The second plot will be phase phi underscore degree against the frequency omega radians per second. These are just the variables اللي قاعدين يقول يعني they've already pre-assigned. Type the commands in the answer box to reproduce the graphs shown in the picture. فمعطينكم pictures. You have to redo the exact same يعني تكتبون الكوماند عشان تطلعون هالpicture. Note that your script file should just produce the plot, not display anything in the command window. بما معناه everything لازم يكون hidden. تستخدمون semicolons for everything that might be defined. إنزين. make sure that your title and axis labels are exactly as in the picture. يكون بالضبط الكابيتال السمول السبيسينج كله بالضبط نفس البيكتشر حق الاكس واي والتايتل. و the line width يقول لكم set it to 2 يعني line width هني for these two are set to 2. when you click check you won't see the plot. زين ومعطينكم هالكود. زين this code is given which is this code over here. This is a predetermined code but you have to understand how to read it. They have defined W we're using a log space. They have defined G which is an equation using W. لو تلاحظون مسوي dot multiplier لأن this is a vector. زين Gabs underscore db is our first plot like it said in the question. Gabs underscore db will be plotted against the frequency W هذا اوكي مكتوب frequency هاي Gabs in db وهذا الفيز اللي هو phi underscore deg وبعد we know we're plotting against W which is the frequency لأنه مذكور في السؤال against frequency. شوفوا reading this question the plot will be this against this معناته this is your y. هني it's clear بس this is your y against your x. This is how it's usually always said يعني الانجليش ماله يوم تبون تحولونه للماث معناته it's y against x always يعني y axis against x axis. ف you know Gabs underscore db اللي هو الgain will be in the x axis in the y axis sorry والfrequency بيكون in the x axis بس هني في الجراف it's clearly showing that as well. To start we just by looking at these graphs نعرف إن عندنا subplots. We have two plots in one. We know we have two rows one column so subplot 2 by 1. 1 this is just identifying that this is the first subplot we will talk about. Alright. When we look at the graph تشوفون إن ال x axis is logarithmic. تشوفون الخطوط كيف يعني they're logarithmic. These are logarithmic lines وتشوفون 10 minus 1 0 1. So we know we're going to use well y is linear normal numbers minus 40 minus 30 minus 20 ف we will use semilog x اللي هو بما معناه ال x part مالنا بيكون logarithmic وال y part مالنا بيكون linear. إنزين w by Gabs إنزين ال x values مالنا by the y values مالنا. إنزين this is our first plot اللي هو الgain. ال Gabs هني بنحط وهني بنحط ال frequency فال frequency is in the x. First thing you'll put the x axis second is the y axis. These are already predefined. You are not writing these equations بيكون معطينكم إياه نفس الشيء في الامتحان عطونا هالequations. والحين your part the part that you need to do تشوفون هني الخط أسود تروحون help plot تروحون تشوفون اوكي إذا أنا بسوي خط أسود what is representing value مال الخط الأسود. نقدر نروح فوق إنزين تروحون تشوفون هني اوكي black is k okay so I'll have to use ال k to identify a black line فال k for black line. حلو. وفي السؤال قال line width has to be set to 2 ف we set the line width to 2 and we're done with the plotting part يعني with the main plot. Now هني like I said the ordering of this does not matter as long as it's after semilog x but this is the method I usually go with عشان I don't get confused. I start with axis. Always I start with the axis. أبا أعرف الرينج مالي limit شو المطلوب مني. مثل ما قلت لكم آخر مرة you will start with the x range first then the y range. زين نفس الأوردر هني x y هني x و y. زين تأكدوا إن you are writing مو one نفس آخر مرة يعني I made this mistake don't do the same mistake. This is 0.1 it is 10 to the power of minus 1 يعني بما معناه اللي هو يساوي 0.1 أو تقدرون تكتبون 10 to the power minus 1 directly. This is the first number in the range. The last number is 10 to the power 1 which is simply 10. This is your x range defined. بعدين بنحط كوما minus 40 اللي هو minimum value maximum value 10 مال ال y axis. Very straightforward. X label copy paste exactly what's written here in the x label. W rad per second. Gain dB تأكدوا ان G capital لان هني G capital تأكدوا كله ما في spacing and all of this. بعدين التايتل gain same thing ولا تنسون ان there we can see the grid lines in the background so make sure you turn on your grid. I will go to subplot 2 بعد it's exactly the same thing but before that I will check your questions and then and see يعني what إذا عندكم مشاكل يعني you can ask questions now. when I use marker size and line width. marker size when you are using it بنشوفه بعدين إن شاء الله. marker size is for points. يعني the points if you set a marker for them إنزين بيطلع لكم السايز مال البوينتس نفسهم مال الكوردينيت بوينتس نفسهم. اللاين width is for a thickness of a line. يعني يكون عندكم line لأن this is drawing a line between the points. So that's when you use marker size and line width. Why we use semi-log x? Like I said before عندنا احنا semi-log انزين x و y. شو معناته semi-log? Semi-log معناته one part of this is logarithmic of the graph and the other part is linear. What does logarithmic mean? It means 10 to the power 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's what logarithmic means. And it is in the powers of 10. لو تشوفون الخطوط if I zoom in a bit more هني انزين لو تشوفون الخطوط انزين these يعني هاي اوسع بعدين يصير اصغر 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 اصغر. ليش؟ لان هذا من هني لين هني 0.2 0.3 0.4 0.5 0.6 0.7 0.8 0.9 1 which is 10 to the power of 0. نفس الشيء هني 10 11 12 13 4 oh sorry 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 to the power 1. That's what semi-log is. يعني when you're in the plotting in Matlab. It's when you are plotting a logarithmic scale on the x-axis مو linear. If we look at the y, it's linear. كل الخطوط is equally distance between each other. They call this linear scale and they call this the logarithmic scale. Hence we use this is the semi-log x لأن عندنا احنا في الجراف وحتى مذكور في السؤال إنه عندنا linear versus logarithmic. يعني الواي بيكون linear versus الx اللي هو logarithmic subplot. So we use semi-log x instead of plot. Inshallah that makes sense why semi-log x is used. السيمي-log x احنا استخدمناه بعيد لأن ال x-axis in our figure is logarithmic. It is not linear. It's logarithmic. يعني it's in 10 power minus 1, 10 power minus 2, whatever. إنه هو it's powers of 10. It's in a logarithmic scale. It is not linear. This is not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. لأن it is not linear. It is logarithmic. You use semi-log. Alright? الواي لأن linear ما نستخدم يعني نستخدم semi-log x لأن الواي is linear. This honestly you have to refer to the video مال semi-log ولوج اللي هو آخر video I posted لأن I went into detail about when do you use semi-log, when do you use semi-log y, semi-log x, when you use plot or when you use log-log. إنزين الحين كان في سؤال عن الأكسس I believe. إنزين الأكسس why are we defining الأكسس? If you notice هني في الفيجر مالنا إنزين let me plot this عشان you just understand. 1 second. Please make sure your mics are muted. Mock test. Select folder. Mock Q2. إنزين الحين when I'm running basically I'm running the script لأن مسمينه mock Q2. I'm running the script. I'm just waiting for الجراف يطلع لي. إنزين لو تلاحظون هني this is how the graph showed up for me. I'm just gonna make it full. This is how the graph showed up for me. إنزين exactly the same as يعني in the question as you can see it's exactly the same. الأكسس what is the point of الأكسس؟ تشوفون هني it's 10 to the power of minus 1 يبدأ ونهايته ينتهي 10 to the power of 1. This is why I'm defining الأكسس. This is why I'm defining my axis. Because I want في السؤال مطلوب إن this part إنزين to be starting from 10 to the power of minus 1 وينتهي to 10 to the power of 1. Same thing in the y. Minus 40 to 10. From minus 40 to 10. That's why when we go back to our editor x-axis I put the range from minimum to maximum 10 to the power minus 1 اللي هو 0.1. يعني if you put this in a calculator it's basically 0.1 أو تقدرون تكتبونه هني 10 power minus 1 it's exactly the same thing. لين 10 to the power of 1 which is just 10. Anything to the power of 1 is the same number. I just put the range of الأكسس مالي. إنزين values of the axis. So we finished with x. Now we go to y. y مطلوب في السؤال from minus 40 to 10. That's why I put minus 40 to 10. فرضا I did not write this. خليني أحط percent إنه يكون كcomment يعني كأنه I'm omitting this الحين. Okay. اذا رحت الكوماند ويندو سويت نفس الشيء موب Q2. لو تلاحظون الحين هني اوكي حلو، هاي من 10 minus 1 ل 10 1 ديفولت طلع لي حلو لان I kind of defined it in the second one so it's trying to match it. بس لو تشوفون هني وصل لي لل 5 مثلا from minus 40 to 5 it will just assign a default estimated axis من MATLAB. So that's what you don't want to do. زين that's what you don't want to do. What you want to do is you want to follow the exact same axis that is given in the question. You need to follow شو المطلوب في السؤال. That's the whole point of why we defined the axis. if I put this on the side هني عشان بس تشوفون لو الحين I just bring back الأكسس مالي الديفينيشن وسويت الموك بتشوفون عدل لي الأكسس رجع لي إياه من minus 40 ل 10 لأن that's what I have defined and all of that. That's the whole point of defining الأكسس. انزين نشوف شو بعد. الاكسس like I said you have to put 10 power minus 1. يلا عشان بس ما تزعلون 10 power minus 1 ما تحطون don't put just the minus 1. You have to put the full actual value of the axis. انزين this is basically the same. يعني هني بعد عشان ما تزعلون power 1. انزين this is math, this is not MATLAB. This is equal to 0.1 وهذا equal to 10. You can put it like that بعد بس يعني it looks cleaner when you are doing it mathematically يعني correct. عشان you're doing less, you're letting it do less calculations internally. لازم نستعمل command access لأن default ما يخلي أرقام من عنده. فهمت بس أوكي. إيه يعني إحنا الكوماند مال access أنت just قاعد توضح إن الaccess we are using it عشان ما يكون default قاعد يطلع من الماتلاب نفسه. إحنا نبغى نقول له الرينج مال الaccess بس. هاي الفكرة. That's why we are putting نزيد الaccess line هني. If it is linear what we do بدل ما تستخدمون semi-log تستخدمون plot function. That's all. Again this has all been explained in the video very clearly how to do the plotting. يعني هاي semi-log متى يستخدم كل هذا it has been explained in the previous video فما أبي وايد أطول عليه. بس أبا بعد يعني to double check and make sure everyone is understanding what's going on. شو قصدك بنمبر 10 يعني line number 10 هذا اللاين. I will explain the line just one more time. إنزين. We are using semi-log x so that our x-axis is logarithmic and our y-axis is linear. في حالة إذا كانوا both linear we will just simply use the plot function. Plot function. بس لأنه we have one of them only one axis is logarithmic we write semi-log. في هالحالة x is logarithmic the x-axis we use semi-log x. We defined our x and our y نفس in plotting. We defined the color which is black and we defined the line width which is size 2 لأن المطلوب من السؤال. That's all we did here. Clear for everyone? If people are still confused about ليش استخدمنا semi-log x ما يعني وplot وهذا honestly refer to the video لأن هناك في way more information و much more in detail. For everyone else is it clear عشان I go to the phase لأن it's exactly the same idea. ما فرقت if you use semicolon double شو اسمه أو single يعني كذي same thing honestly. This does not matter if you're يعني using it as a string or as a character. In Octave it might a little bit. If it doesn't work one way use the other. I don't remember which one was the proper way. Best if Matlab you can use them all as a character or as a string. It does not matter. من ناحية plotting. One more comment I want to add. In plotting you do not need to, you can but you do not need to put this اللي هو omitting. But you can. It will not affect your code in any way. So it is not required but you could put it. زين نروح للسبلوت y. subplot y اللي طلب منا يكون اللون احمر. ف the only difference here اول شيء semi-log x اول شيء subplot. هني subplot this is first figure او first يعني subplot مالنا. This is the second subplot مالنا. ف it has to يعني عشان شو we put 2 semi-log x w which is our x value. ليش semi-log x لأن again our x axis is logarithmic scale مو linear scale. زين W is our x part. our x اللي من السؤال قال against the frequency والفاي اندرسكور دق اللي هو نفسه فاي اندرسكور دق اللي معطينا في السؤال اللي already predefined. That will be our y-axis. R, because you know if you go to the command window, R is for red. R is for red when you do help plot. And then line width, again you can use double or single quotations. It doesn't really matter that much at this level. It's all the same. Both will work. And then line width we set it to 2. Axis, exact same concept as we did here. We look at the small number and the large number. The small number is 10 to the power minus 1 for x-axis, which is 0.1. Large number 10 to the power 1, which is simply 10. Now we look at the y-axis. It starts from minus 200, so we put minus 200. And then 0, which is the 0, top, the maximum range. Labeling of the x-axis, W rad per second. We take exactly what's written here. Labeling of the y-axis, phi in degrees. And the title, phase. And obviously we have the grid showing, so we have to turn on the grid. That is the entire question. Anything that requires clarification من هالسؤال بعد؟ semi log x, semi log y, log axis. هاي كلها I explained in detail in the video. If you want you can refer back to the video and it will يعني be much easier to see it there لأن ما بي أشرح handout 11 كامل all over again. إنزين. فبس الملخص الplot function will be linear versus linear. السيمي log function semi log x معناته ال y بيكون linear وال x بيكون logarithmic scale. إذا كتبنا semi log y الاكس بيكون linear والواي بيكون logarithmic scale. واذا كتبنا log literally just log ربيعنا log معناته it's both of them are logarithmic scale. Alright, that's the only difference. Everything inside will be exactly the same. This is just to determine what type of graph يكون عندنا. Okay, moving on to question number 3. زين. Question number 3. Let me save this. Question number 3 is very straightforward. Create the following complex numbers. You just write a equal 1 plus 1i. You should all know this. 2 minus 3i, 8 plus 2i. يعني already given as complex numbers. This is just testing your complex numbers and then how to use them. For a is equal to 1 plus i, you just write it exactly the same way. To b equal to minus 3i, c is equal to 8 plus 2i. You can use any method of the many methods you have learned. Find the angle from the horizontal theta of each of the numbers. Store the variables in theta a, theta b, theta c. Angle a, angle b, angle c to find the angles of each one. Very straightforward. Alright? It's easy, simple. حالة كانت فاطمة أتوقع عندها سؤال كان يسأل عن الماجنتيود. What you will write مثلا mag A is equal to abs of A, abs و B و C نفس الشيء بيكون absolute C, absolute B و that's it. Exactly the same thing. Absolute لأنه finds the magnitude of a polar function or of a complex number. Any questions about هالسؤال? Very straightforward, very direct. I don't think يعني people will have an issue with it. المعادلة أي معادلة اللي بتكون مكتوبة؟ You can just copy it. يعني قصدك you copy here ال A في هذا. I don't think بيعطيكم سؤال كذي. I think this is more just to understand the concept. بس أنا I prefer you are just writing the من ناحية equations you are writing them yourselves عشان بس تتأكدون إن الكتابة صحيحة ما يكون في غلطة في الcopying. The only thing I would recommend 100% copying is the variable names. هني theta A literally select control C تعالوا هني control V لأن you do not want to lose marks لأن your variable name is incorrect. وأيام يوم إحنا سوينا الامتحان many students lost marks وال teacher he was not forgiving about it ما عطاهم علامات because they have written هني بدال theta capital C كاتب theta small c literally something يعني like that. إنزين يعني something like this. He was not forgiving. So make sure حرام تخسرون علامات على variable naming. Okay, moving on. This one is a fun one. I know I say it's fun, لأن honestly for me it is fun. So يعني استانسوا شوي وياي يعني enjoy doing MATLAB with me a little bit. I know you guys have an exam, but enjoy it a little bit. A sensor that monitors the temperature of a tank records the data shown in the table below. We have time in hours معطلنا إياه و temperature معطلنا إياه. Part A, create a column vector T for time in hours. How do we create a column vector? Multiple different ways. Best first we analyze our data. Our data is 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. So there is an order. There is يعني إن في relation. So we can say it's from 0 to 18. From 0 to 18. Increment of 2. Increment of 2 يعني plus 2. 0 plus 2, 2 plus 2, 4 plus 2, 6 plus 2, 8 كذي. But make sure you are reading the question. It says column vector. This will give us a row vector. So we put it in between parentheses and just do the inverse عشان يعطينا ال column vector. Straightforward. Part B, temperature. Temperature, there is no specific order. You will manually write all of them. And then you can either put هني الانverse عشان يستوي column أو تشيلون الانverse and inside تكتبونه ويا semicolons instead. Both are correct. ما في غلطة. There are many different ways you can write them. But لأنه ما في order you have to write them one by one. Make sure when you are copy pasting each number you يعني reread it and double check that every number is correct. A and B are easy. You should all know this. Part C. Combine the column vectors defined in A and B to create a 10 by 2 matrix. زين. A 10 by 2 matrix is basically what? 10 rows, 2 columns. We already have 2 columns. Very simple. كم مرة أقول لكم when we are doing a comma in between معناته we are separating one column from another column. When we are putting a semicolon in between we are separating a row from another row. But في هالحالة احنا عندنا 2 columns. So we want to just separate 2 columns. So we just define the matrix. Temperature first لأنه هو لازم we plot the temperature يعني أو time first sorry لأن احنا we're just following the table إنزين. لأنه هو قال vectors defined in A and B we'll follow the order. In A هو time وin B هو temperature. For time this is our first column vector, comma to indicate that we're starting a new column is second column vector. Alright. بنخلص هالسؤال إن شاء الله and we'll take a prayer break. Part D زين. This should be understood, very straightforward. الحين part D it's asking us to plot. Very simple linear plotting, so we'll just use plot. We only have a single plot, not subplotting, nothing. A 10 by 2 matrix B صح يعني we have to call this matrix B مسمين الماتريكس لأنه في السؤال B. So make sure you call the matrix depending on the variable. Thank you for letting me know. مو بمات B بس B بس I think it will be much clearer and if you're not 100% sure of the variable name تأكدوا من الانفيجيليتر من الأستاذ whatever من الcoordinator if he's going from classes to classes. Tell them what is the function what should it be the variable name. لأنه مو بواضح يعني قل له قصدكم matrix B اسم الفاريبل or whatever. بس في هالحالة يعني it should be just called B المفروض. Note that your script file should just produce the plot not display anything in the command window. شيء يعني everything in the script لازم يكون hidden. Alright ما يكون displayed. Make sure that your title and axis labels are labeled properly. تروحون title copy paste exactly what's written here. Title you will paste في التايتل. X label نفس الشيء. Y label نفس الشيء. Alright. Exactly the same thing. Copy paste. الحين نروح للplot نفسه. Line width we need it to be 2. Line color to be black و line style to be dotted. ولاحظوا one more thing they want the marker to be a circle. What do we do? أول شيء we are plotting temperature against time. Plot the temperature against time. يعني temperature is y, time is x. فالt بنحطه هني وبعدين في الx مكان الx والtemperature بنحطه هني في مكان الy. That's our first thing. Plot function. Then we will define الcolor والformatting وما أدري شنو وهالسوالف نروح هني للليست حبيبنا. أول شيء الcolor. شو الcolor يبقى black. Where is black? Black is K. حلو black is K. بعدين شو يبقى line style dotted. نروح للline styles اللي هم آخر واحد هني. dotted بنستخدم colon. بعدين بعد طلب نبغى ماركر يكون circle، نروح للماركر ليست. circle معناته O، فبنروح هني بنحط K double dot O. بس basically the order doesn't matter at all which you put first، بس أنا I like to يعني do it based on السؤال اللي يعطيني إياه عشان ما أخربط. Simple. Done. Formatting done. Now it's line width. It was asking about line width. We go line width. Put the line width. 2. Done. Include grid. So we have to put grid on. مثل ما قلت title X label Y label everything should be mentioned copy pasted exactly as required from السؤال. زين simple easy. Any questions? I'm just gonna run the function عشان you see what it will look like. Q4 زين. Oops. This is your function. لو تلاحظون هني عندنا الماركرز are in circles. البوينتس مالنا are all plotted. هني ما طلب الاكسس رينج ف we did not have to include access لانه مو بس مطلوب في السؤال. فالديفولت رينج is fine. لو تلاحظون نفس ما قلت دواوير على البوينتس كلهم على السيركلز لانه we mentioned it. اللاين the color is black. اللاين width ماله 2. اكبر زين هذا شوي. زين هذه للسيركلز. اللاين itself is dotted. زين and that's it. You're done. Temperature x time. Temperature in degrees. Time in hours. الأكسس labeling copy pasted from here and simply that's it. كان في سؤال متى نستخدم subplot و plot. لو تشوفون هني we just have one plot ما عندنا a second plot. If we want to add additional plots to the same figure that's when we use subplot. نفس الموك تيست 2 كان. زين لو نروح للموك تيست 2 كان عندنا two separate plots within the same window يعني this window over here we have two plots within it. That's when we use subplot. This is subplot number 1, the one on top, and this is subplot number 2, the one at the bottom. That's when we use subplot and that's when we use plot. Here we only have one plot that we need to plot. That's why there is only one figure and one plot. We don't use subplot. ولا تنسون السبplot is a separate function. ما تروحون do not do this mistake. Do not go write subplot زين و x y الوان. لا, this is completely wrong. Do not do this. What you have to do is just write it at the top of where you will start plotting وبعدين تروحون تحطون يا plot يا semilog whatever the requirements are. وبعده when you're done with plotting the first one you will write subplot again with the second number. يعني هني number 1, second plot will be number 2. That's it. Okay. Any questions before we take a prayer break? Any questions about this? It was very straightforward I feel. زين. Defining a column vector, 2 of them. زين. We define the first column vector, we define the second column vector, we define the matrix B, which we use the comma in between لأن this is our first column, second column. 10 by 2 بيكون لأن 10 rows 2 columns, and then we just did the plotting. Any questions before we take a prayer break? في السبلوت if you're asking about السبلوت دائما بيكون row column. يعني if we if we just I wanted to show you this. السبلوت بيكون هني في الاديتور لما نروح تشوف السبلوت مالنا we mentioned it's a 2 by 1. زين we mentioned it's a 2 by 1 معناته we have 2 rows يعني 2 rows of graphs, 1 column of graphs. Alright. that's what the 2 by 1 stands for. فدائما بيكون على حسب الرقم اللي انتو تعطونه. وطبعا السبلوت هذا لأن a 2 by 1 should give you a total of 2 locations بيكون عندكم 1 و 2. إذا كان 2 by 2 2 times 2 is 4 فبيكون عندكم 4 total subplots وهلا مجرى. في البارت A if you wanted to use that لازم تكتبين ال variables كاملين separately. يعني هني you can do 0 2 4 6 كذي يعني until the end. but and then at the end of it of course you have to put semicolon أو sorry quote اللي هو البرايم أو الانverse or whatever. إذا you don't want to use the inverse هني you have to put semicolon like that يعني for all of them. However it does not make sense لأنه already you have a range يعني you have a يعني عندكم a pattern, so it's easier to write it this way. And when you are using the colon operator you do not use the square brackets for it whatsoever. The only reason we used parentheses here is for the mathematical operation of the inverse. That's it. That's the whole idea. إنه عشان يسوي mathematical operation of inverse. But you can use that to define it in a different way, yes. But you should also يعني understand how to find the easiest way to write all the numbers. خاصة في امتحان ما عندكم time ما تبون تردون تكتبون كل الأرقام و you might make a mistake and all of that. Any other questions before we take a break? Thumbs up if you want to take a break now عشان بس أتأكد كل حد أوكي. We'll take a break. Let's say 15-minute break تقريبا. We'll be back by 5:20. 5:20, is that fine for everyone? 5:20 we'll be back. Okay, back by 5:20. تمام. I'll also be back at 5:20 and inshallah we'll continue the rest. Okay, are most of you back or you want to wait 5 more minutes عشان الكل يوصل؟ بس thumbs up عشان I see how many people are back. And we'll wait just a bit more, just a few more minutes. So far we finished up to question 4. While waiting, anyone has any questions about the ones we did so far? Anything not clear? You can ask now. Okay, let's begin. زين عشان if the session doesn't go too long وعشان I have enough time to answer every other questions after the session بعد. Question 5. Question 5 says type the commands that would define the variables x and y, then plot y against x. So we know we have to do this plot. The variable x should be a row vector from -8 to 8 in the steps of 0.01. يعني -8 till 8 and the steps should be 0.01. Very simple, very straightforward. We assign it to a variable x. The variable y should be the following quadratic function, which is x cubed minus x minus 2. Now, most of you is gonna write it like this, which is wrong. حد في الشات يقدر يقول لي why يعني we have to use a dot multiplier in this case? Why are we using x dot power 3? Anyone knows why? Most of you are correct. We are dealing with a vector. Our x is defined as a vector. Then نكتب x to the power of 3, just like this. We are basically saying do matrix algebra. We don't want to do matrix algebra. We just want the scalar values. يعني basically we want -8 times -8 times -8. We just want it to be scalar algebra. So what we have to do is we have to put the dot for the vector so that it understands يعني I want it to cube all of its own numbers within the vector, not multiply the vector by itself as a whole. فهاي الفكرة. That's why we have to, the whole trick of this question is to make sure you are putting the dot multiplier for the power. Then you write the remaining equation, minus x minus 2. No, there's no multiplication or division here, so you can just add them normally. And then we plot them. Plot x, plot y, زين. Plot of y against x, x y, grid on, and that's that. I don't know why I didn't add the axis, but we can add the axis. For example, خلينا نشوف أول شيء before I add the axis. إذا الحين إحنا we went to the command window, Mach Q5, Mach Q5. إذا ما ضفنا الأكسس بتلاحظون إن it is the same as the default. زين ال default already is from -600 to 600 and -8 to 8 for each axis. زين يعني -8 to 8 here, -600 to 600. So I didn't add them. However, it's always better to be safe than sorry. So axis, عشان بعد you understand the point of axis. Open parentheses, then we open a square bracket inside. We start with the x, which is from -8 to 8. And then the y, which is from -600 to +600. And that's it. So just the range of x and the range of y based on the given axis. And that's the end of this question. Very straightforward, very direct. If I run the command again, Mark Q5, if we look at the figure, exactly the same figure. بالضبط نفس الشيء لو تقارنون هذا ويا هذا. And that's the end of it. Very easy, very straightforward. I don't think anyone will have any questions about this. Line y in part 1, why did you put 0.1 زين. In order, أول شيء x, in the question it says the variable x should be a row vector from -8 to 8. So we know we can write that this way, you know, just using the colon operator from -8 to 8. بس كاتبين لنا in steps of 0.01 معناته there should be a step. فلأن في step of 0.01 we have to put that in between both using the colon operator just to satisfy the question's requirements. We use the dot operator here because we have a vector where we want to multiply the elements. We want the elements to be cubed and we don't want the actual vector to multiply itself. لأنه we want the elements to be cubed, we are putting the dot to the power of 3 minus x minus 2, and then we just do the plotting function. Line y. Does that make sense, Noor? The line y, we use the dot ليش? We use the dot before انزين عشان I explain this in a better way. ليش نستخدم الدot? I just want you guys to clearly understand. If we have a vector x is 1 2 5 انزين أو خلي 1 2 4 x 1 x equal to 1 2 4 انزين we have a vector 1 2 3 4. alright, إذا سوينا x power 2 or x power 3 or whatever بيعطينا error. لأن if you remember, what does x power 2 basically mean? It basically means we're doing x times x. إنزين if we are not putting a dot multiplier, if we are not putting the dot يعني multiplier حق this equation when we're doing x squared or x times x, it's multiplying this as a vector. يعني قاعد يسوي matrix multiplication أو matrix algebra that we learned in I think handout 8 if I'm not mistaken. And that has its own set of rules where the number of rows, number of columns, all of that. Excuse me. We don't want to do that. احنا بس اللي نبغى نسوي ال1 نسوي squared, the2 نسوي squared, the 3 مثلا نسوي squared, وال4 نسوي squared. The element wise. So they call excuse me. So they call that element wise. And these are the elements. We want the actual elements inside it to be squared. That is why we put the dot multiplier so that now it does 1 times 1, which is 1, 2 times 2, which is 4, 3 times 3, which is 9, 4 times 4, which is 16. The elements نفسهم within the vector, we want it to be squared or multiplied or whatever. That is why we are using el dot. If we just put x times x, it is doing the matrix multiplication or matrix algebra where it's multiplying the entire row with row, which is cross multiplication or dot multiplication in math, and that is not what we want in this case. عشان شي استخدمنا ال dot multiplier because we want element wise to find the cubes يعني the cube value of each element itself within the vector. So yes, you use the dot when you're dealing with vectors if you are not trying to do vector or matrix multiplication. حالة matrix multiplication, you can refer to that video to what the difference is and how it's done and when we are not going to be using the dot. But most of the time you will be using the dot if you are trying to target each element by itself. Alright? Can we move on? Any other questions about this? They will not mention it directly, بس يعني I'm pretty sure they will say something like multiply this matrix with this matrix. يعني يا بيقولون لكم element wise يا بيقولون لكم يعني kind of perform matrix algebra. Element wise يعني كلمة element wise, which I will write right now in chat. Element wise إنزين element wise basically means each element will be multiplied with the element of that other vector or matrix. If you want to actually do matrix algebra where you're multiplying the entire row or in the entire column, there is rules that you have to follow where the number of the first matrix you are multiplying with the second one, the number of columns of the first matrix have to be the same as the number of rows of the second matrix for it to be a valid multiplication. This يعني المفروض السؤال يكون شوي واضح من هالناحية. How do we know we're dealing with a vector? X is defined as a vector. Isn't this a vector? We are defining X as a vector. في السؤال حتى مكتوب the variable X should be a row vector. So we know X, what we are multiplying, is a vector. It's going to be very clear يعني. Alright? So yeah, the whole trick I think of this question was knowing that you have to use the dot multiplier. And now we can just move on to the next question. The next question is question 6. Yes. Okay. Another fun question. شوفوا أنا كل سؤال أشوفه بقول لكم it's a fun question. So going to this, we'll read the question. Create a 5 by 5 matrix of random integers and store in variable called A. So the variable is A. Each in the inclusive range from 15 to 95. All of you should know by now how to define a random matrix. It said random integers, so we're going to use rand I. It gave us the range from 15 to 95, so we're going to write the range 15 to 95. And it said a 5 by 5 matrix, which is a square matrix because rows are equal to the columns. So we can simply just put 5. Yani you could also put 5 and 5. But because it's a square matrix, the rows are equal to the columns, you could just put 5. And that's it. We have defined a random integer, matrix with the random integers. Okay? Now part B. Create a 3 by 3 matrix that starts from this third row, third column, and ends at the fifth row. يعني بما معناه, if we're looking at this X over here, we go 1, 2, 3. This is the third row. And then 1, 2, 3. This is the third column. So third row, third column. It starts from M. And it will end at the 5, 5, which is the last part. So basically, this entire part needs to be basically stored in a variable called B. So we need to get this part out of the matrix. How do we do that? We do it by identifying the variables of A. So obviously first we are going to name the vector B, which is equal to A, open parentheses, because we are referring to the vector or matrix نفسها, we are referring to it, to HAL values. We are starting with the row. Which rows are we? We're starting from row 3, third row, and we'll end at the fifth row. So starting from the third row and we'll end at the fifth row. And which column? We're starting at the third column and it will end at the fifth column. So we're starting at the third and ending at the fifth column, and that's it. And that we will get the MNORST كالأجوبة مالتنا, يعني الvalues مالهم. Part C, assign the element value in the third row and second column of B to the variable called Q. Simple. We have a variable called Q. There is a fifth row. In this example, there isn't a fifth row. In this, there aren't. بس احنا الماتريكس مالنا is a 5 by 5, so there is a fifth row. إنزين. I will show you بعدين. I will run the code and I will show you in the code itself. No worries. Part C, assign the element value in the third row and second column. So you'll go to the third row, 1, 2, 3, third row, second column, 1, 2, second column. So third row, second column. The value L, it's a single value, and it's a scalar number. 3, 2. That's it. All right. Third row, second column of B, because it mentions third and row and second column of B. So you have to make sure it's matrix B and not matrix A. And we stored it in the variable called Q as required. C value is the result of the division by B over Q. الإنجليش هني وايد تعبان بس اللي هو بما معناه you are just going to divide B by Q. Since Q is a scalar value, لأن it's one element, لا رقم واحد بيطلع لنا في الجواب, يعني 5 أو 10 or 15 or whatever يعني, and then it's going to be a single value. It's scalar. So there is no, we're not dividing a matrix by a matrix or whatever like that. احنا we're dividing a matrix by a scalar value. So there is no need for any dot multipliers or doing matrix algebra. It is a number. يعني this Q could be, for example, 20. And then the value ماله. It's the same thing. So in this case, since it's a scalar value, you don't have to, consider matrix multiplication or matrix algebra or even the dot multiplier. And we will store it in C. And that's it. Now I will run the code عشان بس تفهمونه من ناحية التطبيق. I am removing all the hidden عشان يوم اكتب الكود يطلع لي في الكود نفسه. So mock أول شيء خلينا نسوي CLC mock Q6. زين. Let me do that again. Mock Q6. زين. First thing, we defined our vector or our matrix rand I 5 by 5 and the range. Everyone should know that. زين. So عندنا 1 2 3 4 5 rows, 1 2 3 4 5 columns. It's a 5 by 5 just like we had defined it. All right? Now B. B is like we said, we wanted the third row to the fifth row and the third column to the fifth column like the question asked. فلو نروح نشوف A, third row is here, زين, third column is this, so it's starting from here all the way till يعني the bottom here, يعني all of these values اللي هني that you can see should be our B matrix, which is this 3 by 3 matrix. فلو تشوفون, if we compare 89 89 38 38 76 76, so all of the remaining numbers are the same. So that's part B. We have just took this part because it said from the third row, third column, starting from here and ending at the fifth row, fifth column, ending at here. So starting from here, ending at here, and everything in between طبعا, which is all of these values. All right? Now we found our B. Our Q was just simply 1 point, third row, second column of B. So if we go to the third row, second column, then this is the third row, this is the second column, 19. Our Q is simply equal to 19. And now our C is we're dividing this matrix B by the value of 19. That's all we're doing. So you will notice it's dividing each value, يعني 89 divided by 19, 38 divided by 19, 76, and it's putting the answers here. 19 divided by 19 is basically 1, so you can just see that for clarification. And that's it. That's the whole question. So you basically did المطلوب, very straightforward, very direct. زين. إذا خليت بيتأثر الجواب. I'm guessing you're asking عن هذه السيميكولونز. Semicolons هو على حسب السؤال. Into you should put semicolons in everywhere within your script لأن هم they will use the display function. يعني هم شو اللي بيسوونه؟ زين. بيكتبون لكم لاين هني هم من صوبهم هم يعني you don't have to worry about this. Display A مثلا. زين. So and I have everything omitted, right? In the exam, when they run your script, it's displaying A from their side, so they know already what the values are. That's why they want you to omit everything. لأن هم they're going to be doing the testing by يعني from their own way of them writing the script. إذا خليت dot بيتأثر الجواب. الدوت okay, this is a very important. الدوت ما بيأثر على الجواب أبدا. زين بس I want to remind you guys what happened with me مع سالفة الدوت. لو سوينا mock 6 شوفوا the code runs just fine. زين. the whole calculation will be done. لو تشوفون الورك سبيس خلينا نسوي كلير الورك سبيس بس عشان يكون واضح. زين إذا سوينا mox q6 الحين لو تلاحظون هني I did put the dot, it will do the exact same thing. Nothing will happen, nothing wrong يعني calculation wise is gonna happen. But if you look at the workspace, I know it's a bit small, but if you look at the workspace يعني ال Q is 91, ال C it gave us a vector كل هذا. إذا أبطل لكم بس هذا الماتريكس يعني تشوفوا it's a 3 by 3 matrix. الجواب everything is working just fine. إنزين but هني الاكزامينر عادي يخصمكم علامات يقول ليش حاط الدوت إذا ما في داعي منه. You are dividing by a scalar value. This أنا I lost a mark in multiple choice because of a question like this. وين كان في يعني multiple choice إنزين ال correct answer was C equal to B over Q. إنزين أو or is it B dot divided by Q. إنزين بس يعني it was a long code and this was just one line which was the different thing. أنا قلت they're both the same thing, so I just chose one of them لأن it is true they are both the same thing. But السؤال كان لأن it was about for loop و looping وما أعرف شنو فشوي يكون معقد. الفكرة كانت إن you're not dividing any matrices with each other, you are dividing scalar quantities with each other في السؤال مالي أنا يعني. إنزين Therefore, because you're dividing with a scalar quantity, there is no requirement of the dot. فعطاني حتى قال لي ان هاي جوابك غلط، بمعنى انه لو تحطه في الماتلاب both of them will work. So that's why make sure you're only using the dot when you are sure that both of these are vectors or matrices of the same size and you are trying to do element-wise division, not matrix algebra. Alright? So when عندكم scalar, إذا كان عندكم either B as a scalar or a Q as a scalar, if one of them is scalar, you do not have to use the dot multiplier at all. This is completely wrong. Okay? And that's the whole concept of this question. Moving on to question 7. دقيقة. Can we describing each? Quick question. Do we need to write percentage describing each answer at the exam? لا. I am just writing this عشان انتوا تفهمون إنه which part I'm doing. You don't have to put any comments in your exam. تقدرون ترتبونه تحطون comments بس عشان يعني you show off to the teacher and we know how to use comments. But you don't have to at all. You don't have to. الexam ما بي they will never test you about comments. إنزين. For two reasons, by the way. One, because it's not that important as a topic. And two, they cannot test for comments through السكريبتس. أنا ما عندي طريقة أروح لك للكوماند ويندو أكتب لك كود يطلع لي comments في السكريبت. There is no such thing. That's why it's not important to use comments. Honestly, I don't think you should, but I would definitely recommend you ask your instructor, invigilator, coordinator during the exam if you should or you shouldn't. But إحنا في حالتنا we didn't have to. We just had to submit the script. لأن basically when you're writing it in Matlab, you're writing it as a script, so they already have the script, so you don't have to separately يعني upload your own script. So I would assume no, but again double check with your course coordinator, invigilator, tutor, whoever موجود هناك. يعني نستعمل الدوت بس الضرب حق ال1 رو. الدوت يستخدم when يعني تبون انتو تسوون ضرب او division او power اللي هو الأوس between two vectors of the same size. إن ما تبون تسوون matrix algebra. إنزين أبغى أعيد هالنقطة لأن this is a very important point. فإحنا x is equal to 1 to 4 مثلا. إنزين أو في حالة let's do a matrix لأن I already did an example of this. 1 to 4 إنزين a new line نسوي 4 to 7 صح؟ لا 4 to 8 4 5 6 لا 4 to 7 زايد yeah. إنزين ف 1 2 3 4 4 5 6 7 we have a matrix. okay. إذا سوينا x power 2 it doesn't work لأن هني when you're saying x power 2 you are trying to do matrix multiplication يعني اللي هو x times x. إنزين we don't want to do matrix multiplication, we want to do element wise power اللي هو بما معناه we want each element here to be squared. إنزين so because we're doing that we are multiplying a matrix by a matrix. This is basically x power 2. إنزين بس we are multiplying ال x, we are multiplying ال 1 of the first element with the first element of x, the second element with the second element of x. This is called element wise multiplication. When you are doing that you have to use the dot power عشان يوم يسوي 1 times 1 يعطيكم 1, 2 times 2 يعطيكم 4 وهلا جرى. This is when you use the dot. And when you are doing multiplication, division or powers between two matrices of the same size or two vectors of the same size. element wise calculations ان الاليمنتس داخل تبون تسوون له mathematical calculation. ما تبون تضربون الماتريكس كامل في ماتريكس ثاني كامل of different size عشان تسوون matrix algebra. That's the whole idea of using the dot multiplier. انزين moving on to question 7. Question 7 says function, so we have to write a function. أنا أتوقع بيكون عندكم سؤال function في الامتحان. So function. الحين ignore the comments. I don't know what I wrote. Ignore the comments. Let me just do it this way. It doesn't matter. Just ignore the comments. إنزين don't look at the comments. ما أعرف لأنه شو كاتب. بس نروح حق الفانكشن. When we start a new function. إنزين let me just do this من البداية. Okay عشان تعرفون. To start a new function you have to go to new function. بيطلع لكم هالتمبليت. إنزين into you will remove the whole output. All right. زين. And you will put whatever يعني the variable is, and the input you will substitute as well the values اللي موجودين فيهم. ولكن this is an if and else function. يعني هني قاعد يتسسين your if and else. So I'm gonna go through it just in case لأنه موجود كان في الموck exam. Already they gave you the code. They gave you الفانكشن كامل. زين. ف I'm not يعني what you're gonna do is بتشيلون كل هذا. زين. Don't save. وبعدين بتسوون copy paste الكود هذا كامل هني. زين. فهذا الكود الفرق الوحيد بينه. زين. Let me put this as a percent. زين. This is the code اللي هو vector if c equal 1 وهذا equal 1. زين. دقيقة بس. if r equal 1 and c equal 1 scalar or هذا لازم يكون or. Okay, this is the given function. Okay, don't look at this comment at all. The given function if r equal 1 and c equal 1. Before going there خلنا نروح نشوف هو الفانكشن تايب. انا مغير اسمه، انتم لا تغيرون اسمه، انا مغير اسمه just for me عشان I know that this is which question. بس هني مكتوب find argument type حق ال name of function. انزين. So كل شيء ثاني it's given from the سؤال، يعني من السؤال نفسه. out type هو مسمينه out type. input argument هو مسمينه input argument. So I just copy paste exactly this which was given here. انزين. الكومنتس حتى نفس الشيء. RC size input argument RC. انزين. أنا the reason I put a comma لأن it's just يعني it's better looking. يستوي ما تحطون الكوما، بس أظني حتى ماتلاب يقول لكم يعني يعطيكم yellow. زين. ويقول لكم يفضل تحطون كوما عشان you separate your variables، بس it's the same meaning. Let's talk about the first line. RC is equal to size input arg. بما معناه size if you remember it will give us يعني الحين size of x. Okay. يعطينا 2 و 4. What is this? The size of the matrix we have of x which is 2 rows 4 columns. That's what the size function does. فيوم يكتب لكم r يوم يسوي لكم r c is equal to size of x, all this means is we are storing these values in a variable called r and a variable called c in the same order. يعني هنا عندنا column 1 column 2 هذا column 1 column 2. إنزين. ف number of rows is 2 it's storing it in the r و number of columns is 4 it's storing it in c. That's all that this function does. All right. So the idea is to find the size of the matrix that is given. الفكرة the whole idea of this is to determine whether يعني السؤال شو يقول the function to return either scalar matrix or vector. إنزين. This is the whole idea of this function. إن لو حطينا إحنا في input argument مالنا a value. إنزين. It will return مثلا يعني الحين. زين عشان you just see if I run this function if I use this function. Okay, أنا مسمينه mock q7 again don't get confused هم مسمينه find arg type. It's the same thing it's just the naming. إذا أنا الحين كتبت هني of x الفانكشن مالنا x هذا إنزين اللي هو it's a matrix. الفكرة من الكود إنه when I click enter يقول لي x is matrix بس. That's the whole idea of the function. يعني إذا كتبت له 5 which is just one value scalar بيقول لي this value is scalar. وإذا كتبت له 1 to 5 which is rows إنزين بيقول لي the value is vector. This is the whole idea of this function. It's just determining whether it's a matrix scalar vector. هم بروحهم كاتبين لكم هالكود ومعطينكم إياه. Alright. بس الحين شو السؤال؟ Modify the function to return either scalar, row vector, column vector or matrix. فيبون تحدد إذا الvector is a row vector or a column vector. So how can you do that? What do we know? We know that a row vector إنزين بنسمي RV is equal to 1 to 5. A row vector RV is equal to 1 to 4. A row vector is basically one row, multiple columns. A column vector is basically 1 to 4. One column, 4 rows, one column and multiple rows. That's what a row vector is and that's what a column vector is. So what do we know? A row vector has only one row and has multiple columns. يعني this is the situation of the case for it to be a row vector. هاي نعرفها هالقانون، لازم يكون one row and more than one column. يعني الcolumn should not equal to 1. ليش؟ لأن if the column is equal to 1 it will be a scalar value. A 1 by 1 is basically a scalar value. So how can you write that? تروحون في else if r equal 1. Okay, صح. For a row vector r is supposed to equal 1. Remember r is just the size. يوم كنا نطلع السايز، يعني يوم الحين نطلع size of rv بيعطينا 1 row 4 columns. rv مالنا فيه 1 row and 4 columns. That's the whole idea of size. It's just to get out the size. And بعدين يوم سوينا r c انزين equal size of rv, we are just storing these values into variables. Number of rows is stored into r and number of columns is stored into c. That's the whole only idea of this يعني of this line. انزين نروح نقرا line by line. أول line if r equal 1 and c equal 1. What does that mean? معناته number of rows يساوي 1 و number of columns يساوي 1. معناته يكون التايب ماله سكيلر. الاوتبوت مالكم لازم يكون سكيلر. زين ليش؟ لانه 1 by 1 basically means you have a scalar value. else if الحين لو لاحظتوا قبل استخدمنا بس else. Now we're using else if. When do we use else if? I know this is not going to be a part of the exam most probably, بس انا احتياط ابغى اشرح لكم اياه. يمكن حاطينه كبونس question لانه كذي يعني مود. You never know. فعشان يكون بس عندكم فكرة عن الالف else statement. يوم نستخدم else if معناته عندنا multiple else statements not just a single else statement. يعني ما بيكون عندنا if و else وانتهى الموضوع انه يا هذا يا هذاك. هو بيكون يا عندك هذا او هذا او هذا او هذا او هذاك. That's the idea of the else if statement. ان عندكم multiple else statements not just a single one. So you have to use else if حقه. فمثل ما قلنا الاف ستيتمنت مالنا was rows is equal to 1 and الcolumns لازم يكونون equal to 1 for it to be defined as a scalar value. Now to define it as a vector انزين to define it as a vector either the rows have to be equal to 1 or the columns have to be equal to 1 and it isn't satisfying this condition. يعني مو both of them are equal to 1 لأن that's how the if else statement works. زين out type is the output of the function. Out type is going to be the output اللي يطلع في الشاشة مال الفانكشن. زين the scalar is being sent to out type اللي هو يوم نروح للكوماند ويندو مالنا يوم نستخدم الفانكشن بيطلع لنا الاوتبوت نمبر ماله هني السكيلر او فيكتور او ماتريكس. alright. again an important point in if and else. The only reason this will trigger is if the first one is not true. يعني if r equal 1 and c equal 1 is not true only then you will go to the second function. يعني this انزين this function هني او this logical statement I should say مو function. This logical statement هني على حسب ان هذا not true already. يعني already it's taking into consideration ان هذا false. لان لو كان r equal 1 or c equal 1 وكانوا both equal 1 if else statement it will already have يعني outputted something لأن it already satisfied the first condition under f. إنزين so when we go to the else if we are saying either r is equal to 1 or c is equal to 1 بما معناه يا الكولمز يكون عندنا بس 1 column أو يا الروز يكون عندنا بس 1 row. it will outtype a vector. okay. ونهايته الفاينل else statement ما يكون else if يكون الفاينل else اللي هو بما معناه if all of these conditions are not satisfied الاوت تايب بيكون matrix. لان if these conditions are not satisfied بالمنطق اذا الار ما يساوي 1 ولا السي يساوي 1 اكيد يعني بيكونون a 2 by 2 a 3 by 3 a 5 by 5 فبيكون يعني in a matrix form. okay. Before I actually solve the question يعني أنا I don't want to go too deep into this but before I solve the question أنا I want to know if everyone understood يعني concept مال if else if و else. if you have questions ask. I want to try to اوضح لكم شوي لان just in case اذا يا في الامتحان. بنوصل له هاي سجاد، بنوصل له. انزين انت ضيعت. Can you re-explain everything? Okay, I'll do this. I will re-explain everything after شو اسمه after I finish يعني solving this question. لأن I want to solve the question for everyone else يكون عندهم فكرة and maybe you understand a bit more when I'm solving the question. وبعدين I will re-explain as much as I can. Alright? فهاي already كله مكتوب. أنا everything that I'm saying is basically just explaining كيف ال if else statement is given. ما قاعدين نحل السؤال. أنا بس قاعد أشرح ال given. لازم تفهمون اللي معطينكم إياه. You know how to read it so you can solve the question. Now إحنا ال out type مالنا يعني ال output بيكون يا scalar يا vector يا matrix. Alright? السؤال يباننا ال vector part نحدد إذا بيكون row vector ولا column vector. So we know a row vector أول شيء. إنزين let's take this as the example for the row vector. Alright? For this to be a row vector the r has to be equal to 1. هاي صح إن الرو vector لازم يكون 1 row. ولكن ال columns they have to not equal to 1. not equal 1. ليش؟ لأن إذا عندنا الرو والكولوم يساوون بعض إنزين إذا يساوون بعض أو إذا مو يساوون بعض إذا هذا يساوي 1 أو هذا يساوي 1 we might have a column vector we might have whatever. فإحنا what do we need to do? We need to make sure إن ال rows is equal to 1 و the number of columns in a row vector the number of columns is not equal to just 1. That's the main idea. And most importantly it's not or. We are not saying this or this. Both of these need to be true. فلازم نكتب and. لأن we need both the rows this statement logical statement يكون يعني صح و this statement يكون صح عشان يكون situation مالنا a row vector. تمام؟ نفس الفكرة الحين بنسوي حق ال column vector. الكولوم فيكتور لازم الكولومز يكون يساوي 1. لازم يكون عندكم only one column. but الروز دقيقة بس column vector بس you have to have more than one row or not equal to 1. الرو مالكم should not be equal to 1 عشان ان احنا نحدد ان this is a column vector for sure. So we mentioned here ان this is row is not equal to 1. طبعا another else if statement row not equal to 1 and C is equal to 1 اللي هو columns. The out type in this case will be a column vector. وطبعا if all of this is not satisfied the final else statement بيكون out type is equal to just matrix. I will run this code and then I will take questions. زين عندنا x is a matrix. okay خلينا نسميه m is equal to x بس عشان you understand. و s equal 5 يعني scalar. okay فموك q7 حق scalar value s سميناه بيعطينا ال value answer scalar لأن ال s مالنا is actually scalar. s is equal to 5 so that is correct. إذا الحين رحنا موك q7 حق الرو فيكتور مالنا عطانا رو فيكتور which is correct لأن ال RV مالنا is a row vector. again موك q7 حق الكولوم فيكتور عطانا الجواب column vector which is correct لأن CV is a column vector. and last but not least mock q7 of the matrix M لأن all the previous ones were not satisfied من ناحية الكود الجواب عطانا matrix. فمثل ما تشوفون ال out type هني this is the output of the function. إنزين يعطي يا scalar يا row يا column يا matrix على حسب ال if else statement اللي عندكم إياه. إنزين هاي كلها يعني شنو نحط الجواب وشنو نغير؟ اللي يتغير هني مثل ما شفتوا we had to add these two lines. إنزين احنا شلينا if you notice here if I zoom in a bit في الكود بس كاتبين else if r equal 1 or c equal 1 اوت تايب بيكون فيكتور. هذا اللي بس كاتبينه في الاكشوال كود. احنا what we added is لانه مطلوب في السؤال return either scalar row vector column vector or matrix. فاحنا we have to add انه كيف نحدد انه يكون row vector و column vector. That's why we added these two additional lines over here of else if statements عشان to clarify. انزين هذا كله I just need to يعني reiterate this is all handout 12. This is all if else statements. انزين أنا I want you guys to just understand what I did من ناحية ال and وال or. This is what's most important here. يعني how to compare R ويا C equal 1. How I defined ال R و C is equal to the size of my input. هذا you have to understand. وال out type is the function output. انزين وقاعدين نعطيه different values في هالحالة. انزين المفروض هذا ما يجي في المد، بس انا السنة اللي انا سويت الماتلاب امتحاني قالوا لنا الماتريكسز are not coming. الماتريكس algebra specifically is not coming in the exam ويابوه في الاكزام كالadditional question كالبونس question. انزين that's why I just wanted to cover the skeleton of it انه يكون عندكم فكرة عنها. I will move on. انزين and then after the session is over مال الموck exam I will re-explain this to whoever wants me to explain if and else looping statement more directly. Okay. So let's just move on عشان الوقت بس. Let's move on. Very simple question 8. Okay. Question 8 يعني I don't even want to do it بصراحة. Use the command rand to generate a row vector of random and the numbers and assign the row vector. Okay. Hi already I answered it I believe in Discord a couple days ago. بس بعد just to show it. Question 8. This is the line you are going to write very simply. Random vector is the variable to a row vector called variable. يعني اسم الفاريبل ماخذينه من السؤال. Rand function we are using it. We need to generate a row vector of random numbers and the row vector must consist of 5 elements. زين. The row vector must consist of 5 elements. Alright. ال 5 elements شو هما؟ ال 5 elements معناته row column 1 column 2 column 3 لأنه it says we have to get a row vector. So we are just gonna do a 1 by 5 random. Basically we're defining a matrix of 1 row 5 columns, in other words a row vector. Alright. And بعدين يقول each random element must vary from 5 to 15. So we have a range. If you remember handout 3 إذا مو بغلطان أو 4 random variable random numbers. شنو كان الرينج مالنا؟ high minus low plus low حق الرandom. So you simply just multiply the high minus low plus low to the random function that has been generated and that's the end of story وانتهى الموضوع. ما يبالي ولا شيء زيادة. يعني هذا it's not even a script, it's just a one line code. انزين خلنا we define ال random vector rand is 1 to 5 كذي. إذا ضربنا enter columns 1 to 2 هذيلا خلنا I just do it full screen عشان I just show you again. انزين random vector it's random numbers between 5 and 15 لأن this is the max high minus low plus low. Random numbers between 5 and 15 it's a one row vector لأن we defined it here as a row vector. انزين a one row 5 columns and that's it. That's the whole question يعني. I don't believe anyone would have. If you have questions let me know. But it should be very straightforward يعني this one. انزين هذا this one is a bit important. This is functions. Super duper easy. بس يعني this is basically ممكن سؤال في الامتحان يجيلكم كذي يعني الصيغة مالته. Okay. But it is very very easy. I will zoom into the question. احنا امتحاننا ما كان كذي يعني هذا ماخذين سؤال من كل امتحان وحاطينه ف من بعيد يخوف بس. فاحنا الامتحان عندنا يعني كان 4 questions مثل ما قلت. بس مثلا احنا امتحاننا question 1 زين question 1 كان this and this combined زين بدال ما يعطيكم هني الفانكشن جابز ديب فاي ديج وانجل وهالسوالف يعني let me zoom in بدال ما they give you this function احنا we already calculated it based on question 1. شفتوا كيف طلعنا الكرنت I اذا نروح للفيرست موك كيو 1 شفتوا كيف طلعنا الماجنتيود والابسولوت هني. then we had to plot this magnitude and absolute on a logarithmic plot. فهاي كان كامل جايلنا كسؤال واحد. انزين so it's not gonna be يعني I don't think it's gonna be in this format. بس بيكم سؤال اتوقع عن function، سؤال بيكون جايينكم عن هذا السكريبت رايتنج فور ا بلوت، وبعدين سؤال يا ماتريكس الجبرا يا لوب ستيتمنت depending. يعني احنا كان عندنا لوبس او مو لوبس اللي هو if else statements، واخر سؤال كان ماتريكس الجبرا. so I'm not exactly sure how your exam will be بس this is how it was for us. انزين خلصنا من 8 نروح لكويشن 9. اوكي موك 9 1 second let me open هذا. انزين rocket is launched vertically at time t equals 0. the rocket's engine shuts down. انزين حلو، يعني ان الانيشال كونديشن ماله t equals 0 ما في ماكينه، وهي you don't need to know all of that, this is just physics. انزين at that time the rocket has reached an altitude of a in meters. اوكي فنعرف ان ال a is the altitude and is rising at a velocity of v. حلو velocity مالنا is v in meters per second. بعدين gravity takes over بما معناه ان هذا ال gravity variable مالنا. المهم all you need to know is the equation is this. you know what t is, it's the time, you know that v is the velocity, and you know that a is the altitude based on the question. create a function called height، يعني الفانكشن name لازم يكون height that accepts time, altitude and velocity as inputs in this order. شوفوا وضح لكم ان عندكم 3 inputs time, altitude and velocity، فبيكون عندكم 3 input arguments in that order. فأول واحد بيكون time، ثاني واحد بيكون altitude، ثالث واحد بيكون velocity in this order and returns the height of the rocket اللي أنا سميته h. you can call it h, you can call it يعني here you can call this time t a v I don't think it matters بس try to follow يعني اللي في السؤال شوي عشان إنه ما يكون في خربطة. يعني هني when it's defining it it's not telling you the variable is called a، هم يقولون لكم في الايكويشن ال a stands for altitude والvelocity v في الايكويشن it stands for velocity. alright انزين to write this function create a function called height that accepts time, altitude as inputs and returns the height of the rocket. you just literally all you do is write this equation into this and make sure the input arguments مالكم التايم ال a وال v انزين are exactly the same thing mentioned. يعني ال v هني same as v هني، a is same as the a هني، ال input arguments with t is the same as the t and your output is h obviously which is going to be h and name the function. هذا أهم شيء أنا مسمينه mock q9 بس ال function name should be height لأن the create a function called height. that's the only thing you have to do. end of the function done completely done. عشان بس تشوفون انه صح هم استخدموا الفاليوز 3 4 50 وطلع لهم جواب 109.90. اذا سوينا mock q9 of 3 4 50 زين طلع لنا جواب 109.90 just as expected. That's it. That's the whole function. The whole function looks scary وما تعرفون وما ادري شو، بس step by step you don't need to understand the physics behind it, you need to understand the equation of it. تفهمون انه اوكي هني عندنا h عندنا t عندنا v وعندنا a. شنو معناته؟ ال h is the height حلو انزين، ال altitude is a حلو، ال v is the velocity اوكي حلو انزين، و t هو التايم اوكي حلو انزين. This first line is just explaining physics، مو بلازم تعرفون شو معناته، قاعد يقول لكم ان بداية الوقت when time is zero ان الصاروخ على الارض للحين ما طلع، بس the rocket engines are shut down يعني انه مو بشغالة بما معناه، بس that's the whole point ان it's a physics question. بس انتو you don't need to worry about that. انتو هذا اللاين وهاي الايكويشن is the most important part. create a function called height، فهني لازم انتو تسمونه height. don't do what I did, you should call it height. انزين when you save it as height as well. okay that accepts time t, altitude a velocity v تقدرون تكتبون له هني time. إذا كتبتوا هني time just make sure you are writing time here as well. Time here as well. عشان إن all the variables are the same. You can do the exact same thing. That's fine. It works out. A و V. إنزين. And as inputs in this order and returns the height. فنعرف إن الهايت بيكون الأوتبوت مالنا. فلازم يكون هاي all equal to h. And you just copy paste the same equation. يعني you write it properly in Matlab terms. Make sure when you're doing v and time you don't just write vt. You have to put v times time. T squared, it's t power 2. Remember, هني we are dealing with scalar values. There is no mention of any vectors. There might be sometimes, but in this case there is no mention of vectors. If there was vectors, يعني مثلا قالوا لكم a range of time, which is a vector, يعني time from 0 to 10, which is a vector, you have to put the dot multiplier here. In this case, it's a scalar. It's only one value. You do not need to put the dot multiplier. And then same thing here. لأن if these are both vectors, if they are both vectors, you're gonna have to put dot of the same sizes, of course. بس لأن this is all scalar multiplication, it is fine. If v is scalar and time is vector, if it is scalar and this is vector, مو لازم تحطون dot لأن you're just doing scalar multiplied by a vector, which can be done normally. And that's it. يعني في هالسؤال there is no tricks like that. You just apply and done. That's it. Very simple. شوفوا يعني غيرت الحين سميته time. If I go back here, mock Q9, exactly same numbers, exactly same answer. ما تشوفون ال T, ما تشوفون ال V, ما تشوفون ال H, ما تشوفون ولا شيء, بس تشوفون ال final answer based on this equation, on this function. ليش مكتوب t equals 0 إذا t is the input؟ قاعد مثل ما قلت لكم this was just يعني الفيزيكس question. يقول لكم إن at t equals 0 this is the situation. بس that's all it's saying. يعني يوم t يكون 0 الروكت للحين ما بدأ. بس at t equal 10 مثلا يمكن الروكت طاير. يعني it's just the physics part of it. It's not that important. Can we put t point توني شرحت t to dot power بتستخدم. شلون أفرق إذا كان scalar ولا vector؟ بالسؤال يعني it's gonna be very obvious. أول شيء إذا في السؤال they didn't mention anything regarding vectors, you're assuming all the values are scalars with logic طبعا. يعني إن بالمنطق تشوفون إذا it's not a range of time or a range of values or whatever, it's a scalar number. يعني إذا تقول لكم إن time is ranging from 0 to 10 with a step of 2, هني you should know إن it's a vector obviously. يعني لأن if you write it that's basically writing t is from 0 to 10, 0 with a step of 2 to 10. So this you know it's a vector. وفي السؤال المفروض يكون هذا الشيء واضح. إذا ما تعرفون اسألوا عشان تتأكدون. It's not a stupid question. If it's not clear بعض الأسئلة it's super clear. يعني مثلا لو رحنا لهالسؤال انزين وين هذا هني لو تسألون استاذ is the time a vector ولا لا انزين انا ما بخلي الاستاذ يقول لكم صح ولا غلط. انا من نفسي باجي للجامعه وبضربكم كف لانه بصراحه it's a stupid question. انزين it's gonna be a stupid question. You should know that this is a vector لان you are defining it as a column vector. Alright, so it is very clear in the question if you're dealing with vectors and يعني in most of the questions if you're dealing with vectors ولا لا. ولكن إذا مكتوب يعني مو بوايد واضح مثلا في هالحالة nothing is mentioned if it's a scalar or a vector value, assume it's scalar. إنزين assume it's scalar, but even better yet ask the teacher. قولوا له it's not mentioned الحين الفيلوسيتي هذا if it's a vector ولا لا في هالحالة. In this case what should we consider it as, because my code will change depending on that. إنزين but it should be more obvious. يعني أنا اللي إحنا امتحاننا يعني كان واضح شنو scalar شنو vector شنو matrix. It was very clear. Any questions about the function? Is it clear? ما أعرف ليش people are playing يعني chess in the park, بس على راحتكم يعني. زين. Very easy, very simple, very straightforward. Alright. حلو. تمام. I think this is 9. We have 2 more questions. Fun. Thank you, Bay. Very fun. I agree. It is so much fun. إنزين. حد عنده سؤال على هالسؤال question 10 I will solve it يعني in 2 seconds بس does anyone have a question about this simply you're naming a variable mass ounces assign a value to it وبعدين تسوون له function it's very simple alright it is super clear super easy يعني I don't think you need to I'll just show the code really quickly يعني at this level you guys should already know I don't even know why this is in the mock test إذا أعطوكم سؤال كذي مال بلاش زين أهم شيء اللي أنا أبغى أعلق عليه this is basically it mass ounces equal 47 assign it to mass underscore ounces make sure variable names are exactly the same convert the given mass already معطنكم إن there are 335.274 ounces in 1 kilogram فيعني mass per ounces you'll divide it by 35.274 basic math conversion you guys should be familiar with this بس أهم شيء تحاسبون يعني هني شو قال use a semicolon for the first command but not the second command يعني هني مقايل لكم where to use a semicolon so just make sure you're using a semicolon here and not here and that's it answer very simple very straightforward moving on to the last question another plot and we will be done الحين المفروض انتم من نفسكم you know what انا اباكم كلكم بس تكتبون لي البلوت فانكشن مال هاي البلوت زين I want everyone to يعني أنا I'm not gonna explain it I want to see الحين الفهم مالكم لأن هذا it should be very easy زين البلوت اللاين مال البلوتينج زين I just want you to write اللاين هذا just to see what it will يعني إذا أنتم فاهمين شو لازم تسوون وشو مو لازم تسوون بس to clarify this is sign of x زين مكتوب هني sign of x and this is x زين انزين اللي قاعدين يكتبون البلوت كملوا كتابتكم حق البلوت الحين اباكم الباقيين تكتبون لي الاكسس I want you guys to write what should be the axis I'm gonna zoom in a bit more في البيكتشر انزين I think all the axes are showing here الحين I want you to write the code the line for the axis شنو الاكسس مال الكيرف هذا I want you guys to solve this because basically this is how you are going to do for every plot you're going to do the same exact thing بس المتطلبات بتكون غير الدير ديفل في الشات المات موردوك your axis إذا you have to mention don't forget the parentheses زين you have to put parentheses before outside the square brackets كل حد ثاني أشوف شغله صح you can use spaces or commas but I recommend commas but you can use spaces that is correct it starts from -2 whoever z is it doesn't start from -1.5 make sure يعني here it starts from -2 do not make that mistake in the exam inshallah Khalid I don't know why you did colon operator you do not use colon operators في الأكسس الأكسس you're just writing the first value the last value of x بعدين the first value of y and the last value of y you do not have to use the colon operator and then access minus okay most of everyone يعني الحمد لله everyone understands the concept this is so important ب الشغل نظيف سلوم الشغل نظيف عيبني إن you guys defined the sign x as y first assigning it to a variable that's a proper way of how to do it plot xy plot xy x axis ب it's not called x axis it's called x label and y label make sure you know that الأكسس again you forgot to put the square brackets زين لازم تحطون square brackets حق الأكسس alright the title is fine but you did not put a capital P see يعني these you will lose marks on you forgot to put capital P the y axis it should be sign of x it shouldn't just be y زين most of you understand the concept most of you get how you're supposed to do it. X you could just put الحين let me just go to the صح سجاد. Then you have to define X. X is not just -1 to 7 إنزين. It's linspace. You're gonna have to use the linspace command, and it's not gonna be from -1 to 7 لأن it's for pi. It's going to start أول شيء لو تلاحظون من الجراف it will start from 0. The X values start from 0. They don't start from -1. -1 it's empty. It starts from 0. The end value ماله is at 2 pi. This is 3.14 which is 6.28 إنزين. This is 6.28 which is at 2 pi. Okay. So طبعا بيكون it's much clearer in the exam. I'm just letting you know. So we're going to use the linspace command. Let me just open the solution الحين. يعطيكم العافية. I am very happy to see يعني most of you understanding how to do this. Don't worry, the recording will be posted as soon as we're done with the session. And then going to this. So basically, just to recap, most of you did correctly everything. It will be very clear the numbers in the exam. أو إذا أعطوكم graph يعني you should automatically know that this starts at x equals 0. And if this exactly is at a point, you should know where it ends. So I've never seen that. ما شفت ولا مرة إنهم عاطينا شيء. هم عادة بيخلوكم أنتوا تسوون الcalculation. يعني they will test you on your calculation and then the graphing of that calculation in the same part. فالمفروض النمبرز كلها يكونوا معطينكم إياه. ولكن يعني if you should be able to read the graph and know how to extract the numbers. فالx if you see I did linspace from 0 to 2 pi. 0 it's then the graph it starts from 0. The actual function starts from 0. And then the line of the curve starts from 0 and it ends at 2 pi. And I just took a random يعني number of elements which is 100. You could take 1000, you could take whatever. But you should take يعني على الأقل 100 كذي عشان إن lines مالكم يكونون a bit more curved ما يكونون سيدة. Y is equal to sine x. Sine x basically is just the sine of x and it will be a vector. Plot xy, everyone knew how to do that. Or you could just ignore y and just put plot x and sine x. That works as well, but this is just easier and cleaner. Axis, don't forget you open parentheses, you open brackets, you put the x values. So you start from -1, you put -1, comma or space, both work. 7, comma or space, but I prefer you use commas. You go to the y-axis. What does it start from? -2, -2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Grid is on in this figure, so we have to turn on the grid. Title, plotting a sine curve. P is capital. Make sure, I think someone forgot to put that as a capital. So plotting a sine curve. Sine x, or x label is just x. Y label, it's not x-axis, it's x label and y label. Make sure you remember that. Well, y label, you don't just put y, you put what is written. It's written sine x. Right? The reason I use linspace هني أو line space هني is because I want يكون عندي a specific number of values. أنا أبغى أحدد الأرقام عشان إن الجراف يكون مرتب. فأنا حاط رقم 100 من عندي أنا إنه يكون عندي 100 data points بس on the curve. والrange اخترته based on what we have here and where it ends. You could do x إنزين. You could do this for example. تقدرون تسوون x is equal to 0 to 2 pi مثلا زين أو 2 times pi of course زين وتقدرون تقولون at a step of 0.01 مثلا زين. You could do that. This is not wrong. يعني تقدرون تستخدمون الcolumn operator ولكن linspace the idea of it يعني it does proper spacing in between the values. يعني appropriate spacing and you have to just determine the number of values مو الستep مالكم. انتوا تقولون about 100 data points. That's why it's easier to use linspace instead of this, especially for plotting, because you can determine the number of data points you want to be plotted. And that's it يعني for the mock. I'm just gonna see if there's any more questions. هل يفرق إذا استخدمنا okay. Why did we use linspace? I think I clarified that. Why 2 times pi? What is pi equal to? يلا في الchat. What is pi equal to 2 decimal points? حلو 4.14 ما شاء الله صدق انك انجينير محترم. انزين 314 محترم. انزين so 3.14 is pi. انزين so 3.14 will be somewhere around here تقريبا. Okay So this is 6.28. What is 2 times 3.14? 6.28. And usually when you're plotting sine or cosine, you are plotting in terms of pi. لأن we're all dealing in radians طبعا هني. So you are always going to plot in terms of pi. So this point over here is 2 pi. لأن الكيرف لو تلاحظون الكيرف يبدأ من 0 وينتهي على 0 at 2 pi. This is trigonometry. I'm pretty sure you did this in high school. Or you're taking it in math 1. I don't know if they teach you sine cosine math 1 بس يمكن math 2. المهم the idea is من 0 on the line 0 زين of a sine curve هو يبدأ من 0 and goes all the way to 2 pi. This is pi over 2 اللي هو الماكسيمم. بعدين يرجع ل 0 at pi. بعدين يروح لكم at 3 pi over 2 بعدين 2 pi. Okay? So that's why I put 2 pi and yeah. Then from where you got x and y, I do not get how it can be x. And then do you understand how I got the x الحين Totti? A sine x, this is the function of a sine function. And then يعني you guys as engineers or future engineers I should say you should know this. بس حتى هني مكتوب this is sine x يعني في الليبل. I know that this is going to be the sine plot. So that's why I put y to be equal to sine x. X I just determined it based on يعني انتو I don't believe they will get you this question كذي بيعطونكم values يعني من قبل بس just in case they do you just need to know ان for a sine function it starts from 0 and ends at 2 pi. Same thing with cosine sorry. It starts from 0 ends in 2 pi but بس الفunction it starts كذي يعني يروح زين. Always this will be the range and the reason I put 100 is I just wanted data points. You can put 150, you can put 1000, you can put whatever بس أنا I usually use a minimum of 50 to 100 data points عشان إن الكيرفز يكونون proper. Then I just defined my y function, did the plotting. في الaxis again I just took the range of the axis based on the question من -1 ل 7 for x ومن -2 ل 2 for y هني 2 زين. So from -2 to 2 for y, it starts from -2 and it ends at 2. And the remaining, I think everyone understands. You can put 6.2. You can put. بس هذا هو the period of sine is 2 pi. يعني لأن pi is a irrational number. Okay. So بما معناه أن pi it has unending digits. It is more accurate when you write 2 times pi بشكل عام. بس you could put 6 point يعني 28 مثلا أو 6.3 if you're rounding correctly not 6.2. It's not gonna be a big deal يعني it's gonna look exactly almost the same بس you shouldn't worry too much about this. بس in sine function and cosine function I need you guys to understand as future engineers it's always the period of one cycle يسمونه هذا of sine إنزين لأن it's repeating. The sine it goes up down up down up down all the way. For one cycle until it goes back is from 0 to 2 pi. You should all know this لأن you will all use it in all your courses in the future يوم خاصة electrical الله يعينكم يعني يوم بتوصلون AC circuit يعني this should be common knowledge. إنزين got it 2 pi thank you. إذا تبون if he asks about color you just add the color يعني you should know this by now it will be very clear. إذا تشوفون هاللايت blue إنزين which I don't think he will give you a basic color بيقول لكم أبا يكون black أبا يكون red أو بيعطيكم إياه واضح إنه red ف you have to put red like question 2 I believe. You took the 0 from the y-axis. I took the 0 from the x-axis. It starts at 0 from x. If you're asking about the first line, I'm taking the 0 from the x-axis. This is the 0. It starts at 0 0. Yes, الcoordinate ماله بيكون 0 0 لأن sign of 0 is 0. إنزين ال y-axis is just a sign of x. That's why. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions before I يعني نختمها ونسكر مثل ما شفتوا I think it's even easier يعني than شو اسمه والله I will post والله العظيم I will post the recording don't worry إنزين It's very straightforward. The solutions I already posted it in this chat, and then I will post it again in the computing channel. All right. باخذ لي أنا بس break 10 minutes. I'm gonna stop the recording now.